Brennan Cole stood in his garage, hands black with grease, heart heavy with 4 years of grief. The morning light filtered through dusty windows of Cole's Auto Repair, a modest shop tucked in the outskirts of Denver, Colorado. Three service months, a waiting area with mismatched plastic chairs, and a corner desk where his 7-year-old daughter Junie did homework before school each morning. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. It was home. At 35, Brennan had the calloused hands of a working man and the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much loss too young. He wiped his palms on a rag and glanced at the small photograph on his workbench. His late wife Margot smiled back at him, frozen forever in that summer afternoon 4 years ago. In the picture, she wore a silver bracelet with a star engraved on its surface. A gift from her mother, she had told him once. The only memento left of the woman who died before their wedding. 4 years since the accident. 4 years since he held Margot's hand in that sterile hospital room and watched the light fade from her beautiful eyes. 4 years of raising Junie completely alone, of trading his promising engineering career at Ford for this small garage so he could be present whenever his daughter needed him. Some mornings the grief still felt like drowning. Other mornings it felt like learning to breathe underwater. Today was somewhere in between. Brennan had accepted that his life would remain small and quiet now. He fixed cars during the day. He made dinner every night. He helped with homework and read bedtime stories. He watched Junie sleep and thanked God she still had one parent left. Romance, passion, a second chance at happiness. These were fantasies for other people, people who hadn't buried their wives at 31. Junie looked up from her math worksheet, her brown eyes studying him with that unsettling perceptiveness children sometimes possess. "Daddy, do you think Mommy gets sad when she sees you never smile anymore?" Brennan felt his chest tighten. He walked over and knelt beside her, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. She looked so much like Margot sometimes that it physically hurt. "I smile, baby girl. Not real smiles, not like in the old pictures with Mommy. Your eyes don't crinkle anymore." He had no answer for that, because she was absolutely right. An hour later, Brennan drove Junie to the small diner near her school for their Tuesday morning ritual. Pancakes with extra maple syrup for her. Black coffee, no sugar for him. It was their special thing, the one constant in a life that had been anything but constant since Margot died. The Rocky Mountain Diner was busy that morning. Families grabbing quick breakfast before work and school. The comforting smell of bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. They found their usual booth by the window, the one with the view of snow-capped peaks in the distance. Their waitress was new. Brennan noticed her immediately, though he couldn't have explained exactly why. She was young, maybe 28, with dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail and tired eyes that spoke of too many double shifts and not enough sleep. Her name tag read Elara. There was something about her that drew his attention, a sadness that seemed to cling to her like invisible weight, a heaviness in her shoulders that had nothing to do with the trays she carried. She took their order with a practice that never quite reached her eyes. Pancakes with extra syrup for the young lady, black coffee for Dad. Coming right up. Brennan watched her move between tables, efficient but emotionally distant, like someone going through the motions of living without actually being fully present. He recognized that hollow look intimately. He saw it in his own mirror every single morning. Then the trouble started. A woman at a nearby table, dressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than Brennan earned in a month, began snapping her manicured fingers at Alara, like she was summoning a
Daddy, do you think Mommy gets sad when she sees you never smile anymore?
I do smile, baby. I'm trying.
disobedient dog. "Excuse me, this coffee is cold. Are you completely incompetent?" "I'm terribly sorry, ma'am. I'll get you a fresh cup right away." "You should have gotten it right the first time. What kind of pathetic establishment is this?" Alara returned moments later with a new cup, her hands steady despite the woman's withering glare. But as she carefully set it down, the woman deliberately knocked it over, sending hot coffee splashing across the table and onto Alara's already stained uniform. "Look what you did, you clumsy, incompetent girl." The entire diner went silent. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Everyone watched the scene unfold, But nobody moved. Nobody said a single word. "I want you to clean this mess up," the woman demanded, her voice dripping with contempt and cruelty. "On your knees. Right now." Ilara stood frozen, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. The manager emerged from the kitchen, already apologizing profusely to the wealthy customer, already preparing to throw his employee under the bus. Brennan felt something shift deep inside him, something that had been dormant for 4 long years, buried under grief and exhaustion and the daily grind of mere survival. He stood up from his booth. "She's a waitress," he said, his voice cutting through the uncomfortable silence like a sharp blade. "Not your personal slave." The wealthy woman turned, her perfectly made-up face twisting with shocked indignation. "Excuse me? Do you have any idea who I am?" "I don't care who you are." Brennan stepped closer, positioning himself protectively between the woman and Alara. "I only care about how you treat other human beings. And from where I'm standing, you're treating this woman like she's worthless." The woman sputtered with outrage, her face reddening beneath expensive makeup. She threw a handful of bills on the coffee-soaked table and stormed toward the exit, her designer heels clicking angrily against the linoleum floor. "You'll regret this," she hissed venomously as she passed him. "Both of you will regret this deeply." Then she was gone, the door slamming behind her. The diner slowly returned to normal, conversations resuming in hushed, excited tones. But Alara remained rooted to the spot, staring at Brennan like he had just performed some kind of impossible miracle. Before either adult could speak, Junie did something completely unexpected. She slid out of their booth, walked over to Alara with the quiet confidence of someone 3 times her age, and handed her a clean napkin from the dispenser. "Don't be sad," the little girl said, her voice earnest and crystal clear. "People who yell like that are usually the most scared inside." Alara looked down at the 7-year-old, and for the first time, something cracked in her carefully constructed emotional facade. Her dark eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. That's actually very wise." Junie smiled brightly, clearly pleased with herself. "My daddy says that all the time. He's really smart about feelings and stuff. Not so smart about cooking, though. His spaghetti is always mushy." Brennan raised an eyebrow at his daughter. "Thanks for that detailed assessment, Junie." "It's completely true, Daddy. You know it is." Later that same afternoon, Brennan was elbow-deep in the engine of a Ford F-150 when he heard the unmistakable sound of a car being pushed rather than driven. He looked up through the garage's open bay door to see Alara, still wearing her coffee-stained diner uniform, struggling mightily to push a rusty Honda Civic toward his shop. He jogged outside to help her, and together they managed to maneuver the dead car into one of his service bays. "It just completely died on me about a mile back," she explained, breathless and sweating despite the cool mountain air. "I don't have money for a tow truck right now, so I just started pushing." "Wait, you pushed this car an entire mile? In those worn-out shoes? After the morning you already had?" She looked down at her battered sneakers, then back up at him with something almost like defiance burning in her tired eyes. "I didn't have any other choice, did I?" Brennan shook his head slowly.
"She's a waitress, not your personal slave."
Do you even know who I am?
"I don't care. I care how you treat people."
Equal parts impressed and genuinely concerned. "Let me take a look at what's wrong." He popped the hood and began his careful examination, his trained eyes methodically scanning the engine for obvious problems. Alara stood nearby watching, her arms wrapped protectively around herself. The late afternoon sun slanted through the garage windows, casting long golden shadows across the oil-stained concrete floor. That's when he saw it. She had removed her light jacket because of the warmth, and her uniform shirt had slipped slightly off one shoulder, revealing a scar. Not just any scar. A distinctive, unusual mark shaped exactly like a 5-pointed star. The kind of unique scar that could only come from a birthmark or a very specific childhood injury. Brennan's hands went completely still on the engine block. His heart began pounding hard. Then his eyes dropped to her slender wrist, to the bracelet she wore there. Silver, delicate, elegant, with a star engraved on its polished surface. The exact same design as Margot's bracelet. The one that was buried with her 4 years ago. The entire world seemed to tilt dangerously on its axis. His ears began ringing. His heart pounded so hard he could feel each beat throbbing in his throat. That bracelet, he heard himself say, his voice sounding strange and distant even to his own ears. Where did you get it? Alara touched it instinctively, protectively, her fingers curling around the silver band like she was guarding something precious. It was my grandfather's. Well, not his originally. It's actually the only thing he left me when he died 2 weeks ago. He always said it belonged to my birth mother, a woman I've never met or even seen pictures of. Brennan gripped the edge of the car hood to steady himself as his mind raced through memories, through late-night conversations with Margot, through stories she had told him about her complicated family history. Her mother had made 2 bracelets, only 2, crafted by hand from sterling silver. One for Margot, and one for her half-sister from a previous marriage to a wealthy man named Harrison Caldwell, the little girl who was kidnapped at 6 years old and never found. Aurora, Brennan studied Alara with completely new eyes now, her dark hair, the particular shape of her eyes, the star-shaped mark on her shoulder that matched descriptions Harrison Caldwell had published in newspapers for 22 desperate years. Could it actually be possible? Your car needs a new alternator, he said, his voice surprisingly steady, given the earthquake happening inside his chest. I can fix it, but it'll take a couple days. No charge. Alara immediately shook her head. I really can't accept that. I'll pay you when I get my next paycheck, I promise. Consider it thanks, he interrupted gently, for giving my daughter someone to be kind to this morning. It's been a long while since she's had that opportunity. Before Alara could protest any further, Junie came running out from the back office, her face lighting up like a Christmas tree when she saw who was standing there. You're the sad lady from the diner. The one who got coffee spilled all over her. She tugged excitedly on Brennan's sleeve. Daddy, can she please stay for dinner tonight? You always make way too much spaghetti anyway, and I don't have anyone interesting to talk to except you, and honestly, you're not very good at talking. Brennan sighed heavily. Thanks for that brutally honest assessment, Junie. Well, it's completely true. You mostly just grunt at me. Alara laughed at that, a genuine warm sound that completely transformed her tired face into something truly beautiful. I really don't want to impose on your evening. Please, please, please. Junie clasped her small hands together in exaggerated theatrical supplication. I'll eat all my vegetables tonight. Even the green ones I hate. I absolutely promise. And so Alara stayed. They ate spaghetti together in the small, cramped kitchen at the back of the garage. The same kitchen where Brennan had eaten countless lonely meals after putting Junie to bed. The same kitchen where Margot's absence always felt most painfully palpable. But tonight, with Alara sitting across from him and Junie chattering happily between them, the modest room felt somehow different. Warmer, more alive than it had felt in years. During dinner, Alara told them about Gerald, the elderly grandfather who had raised her since she was very young. How he'd worked as a security guard his entire life, never earning much money but always making absolutely certain she had everything she needed. How he'd taken double shifts for years so she could have new shoes for school each fall. How he died just 2 weeks ago after a long, painful battle with lung cancer, leaving her with nothing but this silver bracelet and a mountain of medical
People who yell like that are usually the most scared inside. When you share sadness, it gets lighter, like sharing a cookie.
bills that would take years to pay off. He never talked about my real parents, she said quietly, absently twisting the bracelet on her wrist. He just said my mother died when I was very young and my father was never in the picture at all. I used to ask him constantly about my early childhood, but I honestly can't remember anything before age 6 or so. He always said I was in a bad car accident as a little girl and that the trauma completely erased my earliest memories. Junie, who had been listening to every word with unusual attentiveness, reached over and gently placed her small hand on Alara's arm. You lost your person too, she said quietly, her young voice full of genuine empathy. Just like me and Daddy lost Mommy. You can be sad with us if you want. Daddy always says that when you share your sadness with someone who understands, it gets lighter. Like when you break a big cookie in half and share it. Alara's eyes filled with tears, she quickly blinked away. Your daughter is something incredibly special, Brennan. I know, he said softly, looking at Uni with a familiar mixture of pride and wonder. She's the best thing I ever did with my life. That night, long after Alara had gone home and Junie was finally asleep in her small bedroom, Brennan sat alone in his cramped living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes he hadn't touched since Margot's death. Boxes filled with her clothes, her books, her treasured memories. He had shoved them deep in the closet and pretended they didn't exist, because opening them meant fully accepting that she was really, truly gone forever. But tonight, with trembling hands and a racing heart, he knew exactly what he was searching for. In a dusty box marked Margot, personal, buried beneath old photographs and dried flowers from their wedding day, he finally found it. A letter written on cream-colored stationery, in the elegant handwriting he recognized as belonging to Margot's mother. He had never read it before. Margot had received it just 3 weeks before the accident, and by the time Brennan was going through her things afterward, he simply couldn't bear to read her dead mother's words to his dead wife. It had felt like too much accumulated grief for one broken heart to hold. Now, with trembling hands, he carefully unfolded the yellowed paper. My dearest Margot, if you are reading this letter, I am already gone. There is something vitally important I should have told you long ago, a heavy burden I have carried in painful silence for far too many years. Before I married your father, I was married to a man named Harrison Caldwell. We had a daughter together, a beautiful girl with dark hair and my own mother's eyes. Her name was Aurora, and she was the absolute light of my existence until the terrible day she was taken from me. She was only 6 years old when she vanished from her bedroom on the night of her birthday. You have a half-sister, Margot. Or you did. Harrison and I divorced 3 years after Aurora's devastating disappearance. The overwhelming grief completely destroyed our marriage. I remarried, had you, tried desperately to build a new life on the ashes of the old one. But I never stopped searching for Aurora, neither did Harrison, despite our painful separation. I made 2 identical bracelets when Aurora was born, one for her, one for the daughter I hope to have someday. You wear yours now, my darling girl. The second bracelet I gave to a man named Gerald Whitmore many years ago. He was a security guard at Harrison's company around the time Aurora disappeared, and I always strongly suspected he knew more about what happened that night than he ever admitted to anyone. I gave him the bracelet and begged him to find her, to give it to her if he ever possibly could. If by some miracle you ever find your sister, you will know her by that matching bracelet, and by the star-shaped birthmark on her left shoulder, identical to the one I was born with. Find her, Margot. Tell her that her mother loved her desperately every single day. Tell her I am so deeply sorry I could not protect her. All my love forever. Mother Brennan read the letter 3 times, each reading confirming what he already suspected deep in his bones. Then he looked up at the photograph of Margot on his dusty mantle. Alara, he whispered to his dead wife. Aurora, your sister has been alive this whole time, and I think I may have just found her. 2 weeks passed. Brennan
I'm falling in love with you, and that honestly terrifies me.
Then don't lose me. Choose us every day.
hired Alara to help around the garage, answering phones, organizing invoices, keeping Junie company after school. He told himself it was simply because she needed the work after being fired from the diner. He told himself it was just basic human kindness, but late at night, when he was completely honest with himself, he knew the real truth. He needed time. Time to carefully investigate the connection between Alara and the Caldwell family. Time to gather solid evidence before he completely upended her understanding of who she was. Time to be absolutely certain before he shattered the foundations of her entire world. And maybe, if he was being completely honest, he needed time to understand why his heart beat so differently whenever she walked into a room. Why her laugh made him feel like he was finally waking up after 4 years of sleepwalking through life. Alara fit into their lives like a puzzle piece they hadn't even known was missing. She helped Junie with homework, turning boring fractions into fun games involving pizza slices. She brought Brennan lunch when he forgot to eat, which was most days. She laughed at his terrible jokes and rolled her eyes at his stubbornness. For the first time since Margot's death, the garage felt less like a prison of grief and more like an actual home. Junie noticed the change before anyone else. "Daddy, you actually laughed today," she announced one evening at dinner. "A real laugh this time." Not the fake kind you usually do, did I? Mm. When Alara said you looked like a confused raccoon with all that grease on your nose, you laughed so hard you actually snorted. Junie's expression grew serious. Daddy, can Alara stay with us forever? Why would you want that, baby girl? Junie considered the question carefully. Because when she's here, you look like you used to look, when Mommy was still alive. She paused thoughtfully. I think Mommy would be really happy if you were happy again. She wouldn't want you to be set forever and ever. Brennan pulled his daughter into a tight hug, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. Meanwhile, across town in a mansion overlooking the Denver skyline, Vivian Caldwell stood at her study window, phone pressed to her ear. What do you mean you lost track of her? The girl, ma'am, Alara Vance. She's been spending considerable time at a mechanic's garage, the same mechanic who confronted your daughter at the diner. At 52, Vivian remained beautiful in that carefully preserved way wealthy women often are, but her eyes held a calculating coldness no cosmetic procedure could ever warm. She touched the silk scarf on her right wrist. Beneath it lay a birthmark, shaped like a butterfly that she had kept carefully hidden for 22 years. 22 years ago, she had paid a security guard named Gerald Whitmore to make 6-year-old Aurora permanently disappear. Vivian was Harrison's mistress then, desperate to become his wife. That would never happen while precious Aurora existed to inherit absolutely everything. Gerald was supposed to kill the child. Instead, he vanished with the girl. For years, Vivian searched frantically, terrified. Eventually, she convinced herself Gerald had done them all and simply disappeared out of guilt. She married Harrison 2 years later, built her life of luxury on a dark foundation of buried secrets. Now a mechanic was asking questions. Find out everything about him, Vivian commanded icily. Her daughter Priscilla breezed into the study. At 30, Priscilla was beautiful, entitled, and utterly ignorant of what her mother had done to secure her privileged future. Mother, I need your credit card for the charity gala next week. Of course, darling. Take whatever you need. Back at the garage, Brennan drove to Gerald's old apartment building. The super was a weathered man in his 60s who seemed to have stopped caring about much of anything years ago. I'm here to help Alara Vance with her grandfather's belongings, Brennan explained. She's tied up with work. The super studied him carefully. She mentioned you, the mechanic who helped her, said you were good people. He shrugged. 15 minutes. Building's got security cameras. Gerald's apartment was small, sparse, and heartbreakingly modest. Under the bed, Brennan found a rusted lockbox. Inside were photographs. A 6-year-old with a star-shaped birthmark, smiling on her birthday. The same girl crying in the backseat of an unfamiliar car, and a letter Gerald had written but never sent. Alara, my sweet girl, I am dying and must confess before I meet my maker. 22 years ago, a woman paid me to kidnap you. I never saw her face, only her hands. She had a butterfly-shaped birthmark on her right wrist. She paid me to kill a 6-year-old child. I couldn't do it. I took you far away and raised you as my own granddaughter. The woman believed I followed her orders. I let her believe it because she would have killed us both otherwise. For 22 years, I lived in hiding, always looking over my shoulder. Your real name is Aurora Caldwell. Your father is Harrison Caldwell. Your mother died of grief 5 years after you were taken. I am sorry. God forgive me. Gerald Brennan photographed everything and drove back in a daze. Alara was waiting. You look like you've seen a ghost. He sat her down and told her everything, showed her the photographs, read Gerald's confession. This can't be real, she whispered. Gerald raised me. He loved me. He did love you. That's exactly why he couldn't kill you. That's why he sacrificed everything to raise you as his own. But my whole life has been a lie. The circumstances were lies, but who you became is absolutely real. That's not a lie, Alara. That's who you've always been. Before he could say more, his phone rang. Junie's school. Mr. Cole, your sister-in-law picked up Junie early today. She had notarized authorization documents, a copy of your driver's license, knew all your emergency contact information. I don't have a sister-in-law. His blood turned to ice. My wife was an only child. Stunned silence. Then panic. The documents looked completely legitimate. Brennan dropped the phone and ran. The next hour was a blur of 911 calls and absolute terror. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Cole. A woman's voice, smooth as silk and cold as ice. Your daughter is perfectly safe, for now. If you hurt her, forget the girl. Forget everything you've learned. Walk away, and your daughter returns within the hour. Continue investigating, and accidents happen, even to very small children. The line went dead. Alara grabbed his arm. This is because of me. I should disappear. No, he gripped her shoulders firmly. We don't run. We don't hide. The only way to protect Uni, to protect everyone, is to end this completely. We go to the one person who wants the truth more than anyone else. Your father, Harrison Caldwell. Harrison Caldwell sat in his mansion study, staring at the photograph Brennan had placed before him. A 6-year-old girl with dark hair and a star-shaped birthmark, smiling radiantly on her birthday. His Aurora, the child he had searched for across 22 years. This was taken 2 weeks before she disappeared, he whispered. I've memorized every single detail of this photograph. He looked up at Alara, who stood near the door like she might flee at any moment. The birthmark on your shoulder. I need to see it. She slowly revealed the distinctive star-shaped mark. Harrison crossed the room on unsteady legs. Your mother had this exact same birthmark. I used to call you my little star. You probably don't remember. I don't remember anything, Alara said, tears streaming down her face. Just fragments, a smell of flowers, someone singing. Your mother planted jasmine everywhere, and she sang You Are My Sunshine to you every single night. I remember that song. Harrison pulled her into his arms. My baby girl, you're finally home. Brennan stepped forward. Mr. Caldwell, my 7-year-old daughter has been kidnapped by the same people who took Aurora. Harrison's expression hardened from grief into cold fury. Tell me absolutely everything. Brennan explained Gerald's confession, the butterfly birthmark, the threatening phone call. Harrison's face went pale. My wife Vivian always wears something on her right wrist. I assumed it was just a fashion preference. I never once thought to ask why. The terrible truth settled over them all. She was there when Aurora was taken, Harrison said, his voice cracking. She comforted me during the search, married me 2 years later. And all along, she was the one who... We need concrete evidence, Brennan said. The charity gala is in 3 days. Every major news outlet will be there. If we can make her publicly confess, she'll never confess willingly. She's far too smart. She will if she thinks she's already won, if she believes her secret is completely safe. First, Harrison arranged for private DNA testing. Results came back within 48 hours. Paternity probability, 99.97%. Alara stared at the report with trembling hands. It's actually real. Harrison's security team located Unii at a warehouse outside the city. The plan was set: reveal Aurora at the gala while a tactical team simultaneously rescued Junie. On the night of the gala, hundreds of guests filled the Caldwell Mansion's grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across marble floors. A string quartet played elegant music. Champagne flowed freely. At precisely 9 o'clock, Harrison took the stage. 22 years ago, my daughter Aurora was taken from her bedroom. I never stopped searching. Tonight, that search has finally ended. He extended his hand. Alara stepped into the bright spotlight, her star-shaped birthmark clearly visible for all to see. DNA tests confirm this is Aurora Caldwell. My daughter stolen from me at 6 years old. The ballroom erupted. Cameras flashed everywhere. In the crowd, Vivian's face went white as bone. No. The word escaped before she could stop it. She's supposed to be dead. Absolute silence fell. Every eye turned to Vivian. What did you just say, darling? Harrison's voice was pure ice. Vivian tried desperately to recover. I only meant, surely this must be some kind of fraud. The same girl raised by Gerald Whitmore. The same Gerald who worked security at my company. The same man who wrote a detailed confession describing the woman who paid him to kidnap my daughter. A woman with a butterfly birthmark on her right wrist? Vivian's hand flew instinctively to her scarf. "Remove the scarf," Harrison commanded. "I won't be interrogated at my own charity gala." "Show us your wrist!" The scream came from Priscilla, tears streaming down her face as she pushed through the crowd. "Tell me you didn't do this, Mother. Tell me everything we have isn't built on the kidnapping of an innocent child." Something finally broke in Vivian's careful composure. "Everything I did was for you," she screamed at her daughter. "That brat would have inherited everything. I gave you a future. I gave you a life. By trying to murder a 6-year-old child? I didn't murder anyone. That useless coward Gerald couldn't even follow simple instructions. But she was gone, out of the picture, and that's all that ever mattered." Police appeared at the edges of the ballroom. "Vivian Caldwell, you are under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice." As they handcuffed her, Brennan's phone buzzed. Package secured, safe, and completely unharmed. He ran outside to find a black SUV pulling up. The back door flew open. "Daddy!" Junie launched herself into his arms. He held her so tightly he feared he might break her. "I knew you would come," she whispered into his neck. "I told the bad people my daddy was a hero. I will always come for you, baby girl. Always, no matter what." Ilara approached, her face shining with tears and disbelief. "Is it finally over?" "It's over. Vivian will never hurt anyone, ever again." Priscilla emerged from the mansion, her makeup completely ruined. "I didn't know what she did. I swear to you, I had no idea." "I believe you," Ilara said gently. "You're not your mother. Tonight, when it truly mattered, you chose truth. That counts for something important." Junie tugged on Brennan's sleeve. "Is Ilara really a lost princess?" "Something like that, baby girl." Junie looked up at Ilara with wide, hopeful eyes. "Our house is really small, and Daddy's cooking is honestly pretty bad most of the time, but it's warm and cozy. I think you need a family." She took a deep breath. "Can we be your family, please?" Ilara knelt down to Junie's level, tears flowing freely. "I would love that more than anything in the entire world." Later, Brennan found himself alone with Ilara on the mansion's moonlit balcony. "I never thought I'd have this," she said softly. "A father who loves me. A real life. You deserve all of it, and so much more." She stepped closer. "You were the first person who really saw me. Not a waitress, not an orphan, not a lost heiress, just me. That's all I've ever seen." She kissed him then, gently at first, then deeper. When they finally broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you," he whispered, "and that honestly terrifies me." "Then don't lose me. Stay. Choose us every single day, and I'll do exactly the same." Behind them, Yunie's voice piped up. "Does this mean Ilara's going to be my new mommy?" Harrison stood beside her, openly amused. "We were just," Brennan started awkwardly. "Kissing," Junie supplied helpfully. "It was kind of gross, but also really nice." She looked up at Harrison. "Are you going to be my grandpa now?" Harrison laughed warmly. "I would be absolutely honored, young lady." The garage looked mostly the same. 3 service bays, mismatched waiting room chairs. But there were important additions now. A proper desk where Ilara managed the growing business. An entire wall covered with photographs. Junie at various ages. Ilara's birthday celebration. Harrison teaching Junie to play chess. All 4 of them together at a summer barbecue. And on Ilara's left hand, a simple diamond ring that caught the afternoon light. Junie burst through the door after school. "Daddy, Mom, Ilara, Grandpa Harrison's bringing that amazing chocolate cake for dinner tonight." Mom Ilara, the title Junie had bestowed 3 months ago, entirely on her own. "You're not trying to replace my real mommy," she had explained with devastating 7-year-old logic. "But you take care of me exactly like a mommy does. So you can be my Mom Ilara, okay?" Neither adult had been able to speak for several emotional minutes after that. Now it felt perfectly natural. It felt absolutely right. That evening, they gathered around the small dining table. Harrison insisted on making a heartfelt toast. 6 months ago, I got my daughter back, but I received so much more than that. A granddaughter who keeps me humble, a future son-in-law who taught me what real courage looks like, a genuine family built on love, not money or status. He raised his glass high. To second chances. And to the spaghetti, Junie added enthusiastically, because Daddy actually didn't overcook it this time. Everyone laughed together. Later, Brennan and Alara stood on the small apartment balcony, looking up at the stars scattered across the vast Colorado sky. I used to think home was a place, she said softly. Somewhere you were born, somewhere you belonged automatically. I spent 28 years feeling like something important was missing. And now? She turned to face him, eyes bright with happy tears. Now I know home isn't a place at all. It's the people who choose you, the ones who wait for you, the ones who love you exactly as you are. He pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. Welcome home, Aurora. Welcome home. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small dramas of human existence. But below, in a modest apartment above an auto repair shop, a family rebuilt from broken pieces sat together in the warm light. A mechanic who had learned to love again, a lost daughter who had finally found her way home, a little girl whose wisdom far exceeded her tender years. And in photographs on the mantle, those who had been loved and lost watched over them all. Everything was exactly as it should be. Everything was finally home.
The story above leaves a profound lesson about kindness, empathy, and the power of truth. When the widowed man thought his life was nothing but a repetition of sadness, he changed everything with a very simple act: standing up to defend a waitress who had been insulted. This shows that kindness doesn't need to be loud, but it can save someone from hurt, and also save us from the coldness in our souls. Furthermore, the innocence of the little girl reminds us that sometimes sincere words of comfort are the most powerful healers, helping others feel seen and appreciated. The story also affirms that the truth, however painful, is the only path to liberation. When secrets are revealed, losses don't disappear, but people can move on with more peace of mind. And finally, family is not just about blood ties, but about those who choose to stay together, weather the storms, and rebuild a home from the shattered pieces.